Hey, this is Mike Levine from Triumph, and you're listening to The Vinyl Guide.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate here. Welcome to episode 280 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And a big happy Memorial Day to all our friends in the USA and to the rest of the world. You guys get back to work. This ain't your day off. Wait until Golden Week or Queen's birthday or whatever. And this is especially true for you Canadians, who, by the way, I think will be extra jubilant with today's guest, Mr. Mike Levine of the band Triumph. Now, most of you know that Triumph is from Canada, but what you may not know is that the band are the 2021 Record Store Day ambassadors for the whole of Canada, which is a huge deal and a great honor, I'm sure. And the Triumph team is not taking this duty lightly. They are introducing a limited edition 40th anniversary box set of the incredibly successful Allied Forces album, complete with a picture disc, a double live LP set from 1981, a 7-inch single, posters, booklets, handwritten lyrics. It's all there in the box set and more. To get your copy of the 40th anniversary of Triumph's Allied Forces, head over to recordstoreday.com and find a local shop, or if you're in the Great White North, just go to recordstoredaycanada.ca or simply triumphmusic.com. Now, today, Mike shares all about the formation and the early days of Triumph, the initial records, going from playing clubs to stadiums in just a couple of years, the condition of the master tapes, the legacy of Triumph, what's next for Triumph, and Mike teases a few things that we may be seeing in the very near future, and heaps more. And if you enjoy this interview, consider joining our patreon.com/Vinyl Guide community. I've uploaded a video of this episode of Mike and I having a chat just for the show patrons to enjoy. And you get all sorts of extra stuff by joining us at patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Plus, you help support this show, which is hugely appreciated. All right, we are ready to rock. Let's conjure up the magic power of the music and start our conversation with Mr. Mike Levine of Triumph. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Well, look at that. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing just fine, Nate. How about you?
I'm doing good. I've got me a hot cup of coffee. I'm ready to talk some records.
Okay, I got a bottle of water and I can talk for a while. Until my voice dies.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, this week on the Vinyl Guide, we are very pleased to have Mr. Mike Levine of Triumph. Not only do you know him from the band, and we're going to talk about the box set of Allied Forces, but also I understand there is the subject of the 2021 Record Store Day Canadian ambassadorship. Did you ever think, as a young man, you grew up to be an ambassador?
Well, I never really did, to be honest with you. And I'm just wondering if I get a uniform or something cool to wear.
I think so. I think you get diplomatic immunity and parking wherever you want. I think that comes with it.
Woo, I love it. For about an hour, maybe.
Well, that's plenty. So do you celebrate Record Store Day? What does Record Store Day mean to you?
I think it's a cool thing. Record stores have been continually shrinking and disappearing, and it's sad that the format, it's my favorite format, is vinyl. But regardless of vinyl, even with CDs and just the availability of content, to me, it's sad, and I'm glad to be supportive of the guys that have hung in and stayed in business and, make product physically available. Because when I was growing up, every Sunday, there's downtown Toronto on Yonge Street. There's 2 record stores, big ones, 3 floors. Sam the Record Man and A&A Records. And I spent all day Sunday with me and my buds, and we look for bargains or look for neat stuff or find album covers that you go, hey, that's a cool cover. The music's got to be great, So it was part of my, growing up in the music, in music DNA, with record stores, because that was a place to discover.
When you were young, it sounded like you spent a lot of your time around music. Was your house a musical family? Did your parents have a lot of music playing in the house? A lot of records laying around?
Yeah, all the time. It's everything from classical to jazz, to comedy, Lenny Bruce and things like that. I was listening to when I was 10, to figure that one out. No wonder I messed up.
Wow, your parents were very open-minded in that sense. So what were some records that you discovered on your own?
Well, my sister helped me. She was a year and a half older than me, so she was a little bit ahead of me on the music end, but she'd bring home, a 78 of Good Golly, Miss Molly by Little Richard, things like that, So there'd be...
A 78?
Yeah, like a 78, a platinum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm old, Nate, okay? Older.
I didn't realize you were 78 collecting old, but okay. All right. So you guys had 78s, and I'm assuming 45s and 33s alongside.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But one of my favorite discoveries, I think, was a group called Brian Auger, Julie Driscoll, and the Trinity. Now, go figure that out.
Quite a mouthful.
Quite a mouthful. But Keith Emerson was a keyboard player in that band, and I actually got to go see them live as well.
Oh, okay.
Playing at a place in Toronto. I was probably, 14 years old or whatever, a place called the Rock Pile. And that had relatively big crew. I saw Led Zeppelin there too. So it was maybe 1,100 seats on 2 stories, not seats, but general admission type place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Masonic temple. It was really the real name of it. But, got to see a lot of great acts there.
Wow. Okay. And what was the record, or what was the event or even moment you remember it snapping in your head that I want to be a musician?
Beatles, Maple Leaf Gardens, girls screaming, going, "This is the life. This has got to be the life."
There's no alternative.
There's no alternative. You got to be a musician. You're just looking around going, "Oh my God, this could be a dream come true."
So you saw the Beatles?
Yeah.
Wow. Tell me about that experience.
It was really, you couldn't hear them because of the screaming. And they played Maple Leaf Gardens, which is the big hockey rink in Toronto. And they didn't have a PA system. They just used the hockey PA system where the announcer would go, Bobby Bond, number 22, 2 minutes rocking. So you really couldn't hear them. I don't bless them thing.
Right.
But they were entertaining. They were great to watch, even though you could really hear too much. But, you knew the song, so you could, kind of hum along, I guess, in your head.
And was it hard to get tickets? I imagine that probably would have sold out really quick.
Yeah, I won about a radio station. So
wow,
I was lucky.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. So fast forward, a couple of decades when Triumph is playing Maple Leaf Gardens. That must have been quite a moment of full circle for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'd seen a billion acts in Maple Leaf Gardens, but well, not a billion really, but yeah, it was that was interesting. First time we played, like the dream of every musician at the city would be to play Massey Hall, which would be your first concert type venue that you'd play. That's where the symphony played. That's where you'd see all the up and coming bands. It was 2,700 seats roughly.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a show booked there. Tickets were on sale. It was mainly sold out in a day or two. It would be our first big concert in Toronto. Fire marshal says, "Oh, no pyro, boys. Can't use pyro in this building. It's a tinderbox. It's going to burn it down." So in the typical Triumph way, said, "Okay, we're not going to play them." Went to the promoter, Michael Cole, CPI, and said, "Well, we're not going to play." He says, "You guys are nuts. You got a sold-out show. You're crazy? Who cares about pyro?" He said, "We care about pyro." It's like everywhere we've played, there's been pyro. Now it's our big show. Every bar, every high school, every church basement, we use pyro. Now it's our big shot, and we're not going to use pyro. Not a chance. He goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" And we said, "We want to move the show to Maple Leaf Gardens." He goes, "You guys are nuts. You're out of your mind." They cut down, what's called the Banana Boats, 9,800 seats. We can't sell 9,800 seats. You're crazy. We said, "Yes, we will. Just trust us. Don't pay us any money. Don't guarantee us any money. We'll take 95% of the gig." And he said, "You're crazy. You're crazy. You can't do that." So anyway, we talked about it. We did it. We sold out. So And we use pyro. So that's the pyro.
And you were crazy.
Yeah.
All in one. Very good. So back to the records. It sounds like your parents were pretty open-minded about the sort of music you were listening to, about the events you were going to see. Were there any records or artists that you brought into the house that raised their eyebrow a little bit?
Not really. Other than my dad would always say that when he heard the Beatles or something, he says, "Oh, they'll never last."
Yeah,
kind of thing. And I said, "Well, you never know, Dad. It's one of those things that I think maybe has legs."
So when you announced to your parents that you want to pursue this path of music, what was their reaction?
It was pretty good. They wanted me to go to school, obviously. They want their son to be a doctor, a lawyer, a construction worker, anything but a musician. Because my dad, it's a rough life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to make a living as a musician. But, I had part-time gigs. I went to school, of course, and we played bands, all my friends. We had pickup bands and part-time bands. And so, I was teaching. I guess I left school. I had 1 year of college, or half a year, I guess. I really didn't show up for the second half much. But I was playing in a pretty good band, and we were gigging a lot. And I was teaching guitar at a music store. So, I was making a living, and we made okay dollars for those days as a band playing bars and, weekend gigs at schools or something. So it was okay. And I moved out of the house, but they said, "Hey, if you ever need to come back, we got a place here."
Is that offer still open? So the first time you were on vinyl was with the band Motherlode. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a remake of the band Motherlode.
Okay.
But actually, no, that's not true. First time I was on vinyl was a band called Terry and the Pirates. That was in 1960-something, late 60s. And, we went to the studio and made a single with this. We came out on Trend Records. I think we got played in one radio station. Then we made another record with a company called Modern Tape Cartridge Corporation. That Tammy Terrell, the singer, her brother, what the heck was his first name? Terrell. Anyway, he produced it. It was done in a real recording studio. The first record was done in like a basement kind of studio. Mm-hmm. This was done in a real recording studio. Jimmy Terrell with a real producer, and it was a 10-piece band. And that record went nowhere too, but it was good studio experience.
Right. And was it you guys getting them pressed up yourselves? Did the band put the money in, or did someone help finance it?
No, the first guy, he had a studio. It was not a bad little studio in his basement, basically, or his house. It was a cottage kind of thing. And he paid to get the records done, and he promoted it. He got in his car and drove it around to radio stations, that kind of thing. And then the second company, they were, a well-financed big company. So they had like a promotion department and, sales staff and that kind of thing.
So Terry and the Pirates, what was the song again? Sorry?
Terry, Terry.
Yeah, Terry and the Pirates. And the name of the song was?
Oh, God, Smiles and Kisses, or I saw it the other day. We were using a piece of one of the songs in the film. Keep on Dancing. Keep on Dancing is one of them.
Keep Dancing.
And the Pirates is spelled with a Y.
I'm not Terry and the Pirates. I'm not finding it. Oh, my gosh.
Huh.
You may have
It's there.
Terry, Terry, and the Pyrates.
I know it's there, Dave.
All right.
Because I looked it up myself. I'd forgotten all about it.
Is it a collectible record? Do you know?
There's none around, I'll tell you that. Does that make it collectible? I'm not sure.
It may be. Well, after this show, it probably will be, because I don't think this record is linked to you in Discogs.
Well, no, it wouldn't be.
Right.
Wouldn't be. You just Google it. Google Terry and the Pirates, and it'll come up.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to be, I got me a project today. So, okay. First time.
The second record was it was Terry and the Pirates, but we changed the name to Aurora Borealis.
Aurora Borealis. Okay, that may
like the Northern Lights. Yeah.
That may be easier. Okay, so that must have been quite a moment to finally have yourself on a record.
Yeah, it was neat. Being a young guy, playing in not the world's greatest band, obviously, and being in a recording studio was going. Okay, it's a whole different world trying to make a record than it is going in a nightclub and playing.
Yeah. What lessons did you learn from that?
That you're not as good as you think.
Were you humble that way as a young man? Were you able to see that quickly?
Yeah. It's like I go, man, it's like when you hear yourself play in a decent studio on playback and you go, wow, I'm way ahead of the drums, or I'm behind the drums, or that's a fart note, or, I should have got my bass set up better, because the strings are buzzing and the level of concentration. And you're nervous and you're thrilled at the same time. And you have to learn how to relax and lay back and just take it easy. And that takes a long time and a lot of hours in a studio to do that.
So from Terry and the Pirates, then you went to the reformed Motherlode, and that was your first.
Yeah, I was working. I was working at a record label actually, part time, and they had actually done the original Motherlode record, a song called "When I Die," which was a pretty big hit in the States and Canada. The guy that owned the label, he said, Mikey, why don't we, put together a new Motherlode and make another record? So he called Neil Bogart, who was the president of Buddha Records that had put out the original Motherlode record in America, and asked Neil if he was interested in financing. Neil said, sure, I'll throw some money at it. So we put together a band, wrote a couple of songs, made a single, and realized that wasn't very good either. It was actually not. It was not a bad song. It was called "All That's Necessary," and the band was really good. And we played a few dates, and just went, nah, not for us.
And that Neil Bogart, same Neil Bogart who founded Casablanca Records eventually, yeah?
That's Neil. Yeah,
got it.
Who I managed to maintain a relationship all the way through, from meeting him back in those days all the way through the Casablanca years.
Tell us a little bit about Neil. It sounded to me, from what I've read about him, he had an arc of productivity, and then once the Casablanca years came in, it got really crazy. Was that your view?
Yeah, well, Neil had great ears. He was brilliant, and as the story goes, even with Motherlode, like John Hammond at CBS wanted to sign him. He loved the record. Neil loved the record. John Hammond said it would take at least 6 months to a year to get CBS to write a contract and blah, 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 and get things done. But Neil said, I'll put the record out next week. Here's a check.
Yeah. He was a doer.
It's a hit right now. Let's just go do it. So that's how that happened. So, and Neil continued on. His partner's name at Buddha was a guy named Art Cass. And Art was kind of Neil's mentor. He was older than Neil, but he kind of kept the reins. They're going, okay, we can't get too crazy here. But then when Casablanca started, that was a whole other. But what it was, I used to call it the zoo on Sunset. You'd walk in there, and it was like no man's land. It was like crazy. But it was. I don't know how to describe it, other than I pretty much knew at that point when Casablanca started. I knew everybody that was working there. This Triumph had already started when Casablanca started, I believe. So, whenever I go to LA, I go see my friends there, and we sit around and chat and stuff. I said, don't you guys ever work? You got records out there. Why don't you do some promotion or something? Yeah, screw that. We don't care. It was always a party. It was a party palace.
It sounds like it was an amazing party palace. So from Motherlode to Triumph, how did that leap happen?
Well, story goes, I was the record company. We ended up making a couple of more records. I got more involved on the label end. Anyway, fast forward, record company, we go out of business. Can't raise enough money, couldn't sell enough records.
Which record label was this? Sorry?
It was called Hopi, Hopi, like the Hopi Indians.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten to know Gil from her, by a drummer, and he had a part-time band. He was looking for a bass player because a part-time band, people come and go. So he called me and said, "Look, I'm in between bass players. Can you fill in for a few weeks?" And I said no. And basically, that was it. I have the phone. Called me the next day. "Mike, I really can't, I need someone. You can do it. You can play the songs in your sleep. They're all covers. Please, I need help." No, not interested. So finally, he talked me into it. He was very persuasive. So Gil and I sat down and decided one day, and I said, "Look, if you want to get serious about something, you and I should just sit and brainstorm about a band that can be successful, that can be an arena-filling type band." And he said, "Okay, let's deal with it." So we talked, and we said, "Okay, what's a perfect band?" 3 pieces. A 3-piece band is like perfect because you can't have too many guys ganging up on you.
No one can hide in a 3-piece band.
Right. There's no hiding. And 2 out of 3 wins, period. So you either quit if you don't like it, or you just suck it up, because nobody is ever going to be on the losing end of a vote all the time. And hopefully it'll always be unanimous. So that was that. Okay, what kind of music we're going to play? Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Hendrix, heavy music. That kind of, okay, got that. What kind of show we're going to have? A spectacular show. We're going to have, lights and pyro and all kinds of great stuff. Okay, what do we need now? Well, we need a guitar player. That would be helpful.
Were you thinking of singing at the time, or you needed a guitar player singing?
I couldn't sing worth a damn. So Gil could sing, though. He had a really good voice. But we needed a singer or guitarist, which are not easy to find. Certainly in Toronto or anywhere else for that matter. They're not like a dime a dozen. You can pick them up in the corner. So we put the word out to everybody we knew, agents and managers and whoever, said, "Hey, we're looking for a guitar player for a 3-piece band." In the meantime, we had a record deal with no band.
Already?
Yeah. A friend of mine had a record label, wrote me a check, said, "Make me famous."
Yeah.
Or make me famous.
Is this Attic?
Yeah, Attic Records, right. So, we had that in the bag. We had a name for the band. We had a poster. We had a record that we made, not just with Gil and I and a couple of other guys.
That was Hobo, right?
Hobo, right. Yeah, good one. So we went hunting. Somebody said, "Go see this guy, Rick Emmett. He's playing in a band called Act 3. They're playing at the Queensbury Arms, which is a bar. Go check him out." So we did. And the band was really good. They were playing, stuff, Yes, and Gentle Giant, really Queen, stuff like that. And Gil's kind of looking at me and going, "That guy's amazing. He's really good." And Gil's going, "Well, yeah, but can he play Whole Lotta Love?" I said, "If he can play that shit, he can play Whole Lotta Love. No problem." So we sat down with him, showed him, check from the record company, the single, the whole 9 yards, and said, why don't you come play with us? And so he thought about it and went, "Yeah, okay." And that's how it started.
Wow. So how long between that conversation and you guys were playing a show?
Time frame. Probably, we started rehearsing at a bowling alley. We got gigs because we made up it's just incredibly stupid things that the agents mailed out. It was like headlines from newspapers that didn't exist in American cities. "Triumph crushes the crowd," it's Chicago Herald Times Tribune kinds of thing. So the first gig we played was in fall of September of 1976, or 5. And I think we started rehearsing in maybe March or April. So we rehearsed for 2 or 3 months, put together sets.
Okay.
A set or 2 sets. So we were playing high schools at that point. So our first gig was at Simcoe District High School, Southwestern Ontario.
So the way I understand it, from the first album, from 1976 to 1978, you went from releasing that album to headlining a music festival in Canada with over 100,000 people in 2 years. That's an amazing climb.
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey everyone, I gotta tell you about the Groove Washer, a record cleaner I use every day, and I've used it for years with nothing but excellent results. Not all record cleaners are equal, and not all of them are proved safely tested long-term for record storage. God forbid you get one of those cheap no-name brand record cleaners only to find out 5 years later that it's slowly ruined your vinyl collection. Get a Groove Washer, ask for it by name at your local record shop, or go to groovewasher.com and use discount code VinylGuide10 at checkout. That's the Groove Washer record cleaner, groovewasher.com, promo code VinylGuide10. Now we're also brought to you today by AudiofileUSA.com, the used record shop that only sells excellent and near-mint vinyl records. With over 42,000 titles in stock, AudiofileUSA.com ships anywhere in the world. No need to guess the condition of anything at AudiofileUSA.com. All the records look pretty goddamn new and gorgeous, even if they have sat in storage for a few decades. Head up there now, AudiofileUSA.com, search by genre, label, artist, dig deep and find the deals. Get a box of goodies today from AudiofileUSA.com, home of the Holy Grails.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
From the first album, from 1976 to 1978, you went from releasing that album to headlining a music festival in Canada with over 100,000 people in 2 years. That's an amazing climb.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
What do you credit that? Another Canadian reference. What do you credit for that hockey stick sort of rise in popularity?
And, people love the band. That's, the record, first record went gold, which was amazing. The very first record. Back then, it took 12 records if you got to make 12 records to make any indentation, because there was no radio that would play it. Radio was just 1975, 76 was mainly top 40.
Now, I thought in Canada there were some laws that they had to have a certain amount of their airtime dedicated to Canadian bands. Is that right? Did you guys benefit from that?
Yeah. Canadian content, yeah, we sure did benefit from it. Every Canadian act did. Mm-hmm. But usually they play it when what we call lunar rotation. They only played it when the moon was setting at 4 a.m.
They met their obligations in the middle of the night. Got it.
Right. Yeah. So, they didn't like being legislated into play. And there wasn't a ton of music to choose from then either. So you'd get a little more than your fair share if you had a decent song.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine there was a time when you were playing to tens of thousands of people in native Canada and then going to another country and struggling to sell out a club. Would that be right?
Yes and no. We were hot in Eastern Canada. We had toured. We had done a tour in Canada, playing small venues. Anything from 2,500 seats maybe to 6,000 seats, depending on the market. But we'd go across the border and play in Buffalo sometimes. So we were getting a following there, and radio was now picking up because you had FM radio had begun and was making a big impact, serious impact actually. So we were getting lots of play in Buffalo and Toronto. There was 2 rock stations in Toronto by then, and we were getting hammered at both of them, and Buffalo and wherever else. But we were getting some play in San Antonio, Texas, and on one station there, and they were playing the Triumph like it was a national anthem. And the record company started exporting records there, and it was selling like they're selling thousands of records in San Antonio and Austin and Corpus Christi, all around there on imports. So, and we were hot in Buffalo. We were playing like this 2,000 seat club became our home there, a place called After Dark. So we go there and play once every couple of months, maybe, or 3 months, because it was a great payday. It was easy gig, and keeping Buffalo alive was important because it was really a start of a foothold in America. But in the meantime, So we got Kiss FM in San Antonio playing the hell out of our records, or at least the first record. And they were also, back in those days, radio guys were also kind of involved in the concert promotion business, whether they should be or not should be involved in the concert promotion business, but they were. And they had a show along with a regular promoter down there that they were involved. It was Sammy Hagar, Joan Jett, the Runaways, Sammy Hagar, the Runaways, and a band called Yesterday and Today.
Oh, Y&T.
Y&T. So Sammy, show's doing well. It's half sold out or whatever. And it's at the Municipal Auditorium, which is about 68 or 7,000 seats, something like that. So they call us up and say, would you guys come down and headline, take Sammy's place? And we're going, are you nuts? We don't think we're ready to do that yet. And they said, oh, yes, you are. You got tons of airplay. Everybody knows all your songs. We play the entire album back to back every day. Blah, 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 blah. The unique thing about this station was it was an AM FM combo. So both sides, the AM and the FM, played heavy metal from noon to 6 p.m. and then they both went religious after that. Go figure that one out too, right? But they had done a lot for other bands, like Rush, who was 3 or 4 years ahead of us. Got tons of exposure. There's Scorpions, who were 3 or 4 years ahead of us as well. They had great success in that market. So finally, they talked us into it. Now we had to, rent gear down there. We had to fly a bunch of gear. We played in Buffalo the night before to warm up. We're flying in there, and we get there, and we're going like, oh man, this is going to be very, 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 very interesting. So, show sold out, totally clean, gone. You couldn't buy a seat. Scalpers outside. Y&T plays, they do good. The Runaways play, they do really good. Now it's our turn. Right? We walk on stage, and the place, was like electric. Everybody's standing up and screaming. And we're going, what the fuck did we do? I can say that word, right?
Sure, of course.
Okay. What the fuck did we do? That everybody is like, they're going crazy. We started playing songs. They knew every word. They'd be singing along. It was like just nuts. So, then we looked at ourselves and said, hey, we can do a big stage. Confidence building by far. It was like you just go, at that point we had done a place called Ontario Place. That was kind of an outdoor amphitheater type venue that admission was free kind of thing.
Right.
That was really our big concert experience at that point.
That was, like you say, the confidence builder, the thing that really made you look at the band in a different way then.
Yeah. I mean, we had lousy equipment, and lousy lights, and lousy special effects, and it was lousy, visually. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The music did the talking. It taught us, it taught me especially, music on the radio, bums in seats.
So let's fast forward a bit here to Allied Forces, which I understand there is a box set coming out. Allied Forces, that was really a bit of a tipping point for the band. Is that right?
Yeah. That was we had built our recording studio, Metalworks. So that's the first album that we did in there. It allowed us the ability to take our time without the clock ticking and the budget getting eaten up.
Right.
Paying by the hour in somebody else's joint. So we were able to go, no, that's no good. It's not good enough. Let's start over. Or, we need a different guitar part here, or we need a better vocal on this, or whatever it might be. We could sit in the studio and write. It was just instead of, trying to write in the warehouse,
Right. Or TikTok, every hour is $1,000.
Right. The clock ticking was always the issue. So, and we had improved as a band. We're better players. We played better together, better songwriters, better vocalists, better everything. Knowing how to record, make a record. Learning from your mistakes and making other records. So it was time. That was the one.
in the career of Triumph, there's before Allied Forces and after. What did Allied Forces, the success of Allied Forces, then afford the band? What was that very visible next level for you guys?
Pretty much, it allowed us to, I would say, coast. It actually made us work harder because now we're pretty much arenas everywhere. And now you got to sell out the arena to, otherwise you're not good enough. You're not making it. So a whole other set, we had to hire people. We were self-managed. So we had to get, a couple of people on board that would do that work. Work with the concert promoters, figure out what to do, how to sell the extra 15% of the seats, all that kind of stuff. So we could just play music.
Right.
So, and we had to have a better show, so we spent more money on production than we should have, but it was worth every dime or every dollar. There was no dimes in those days.
It sounds like you and the other guys have always approached Triumph from obviously the music was there. The music is foundational, but it didn't sound like Triumph was this crazy party, but it was fun, but there was also a real method to building the band and to going from, like, for instance, you invested the money early on into making your own studio so it could then afford you that next level of freedom. It sounds like you guys really approached it very wisely and patiently to build it up over time. Is that fair?
Yeah. We were a little disappointed, actually, at one point. Lest we forget, Just a Game was a big record, too.
Mm-hmm.
Lay It on the Line, still the evergreen Triumph song from that album. And that really went a long way to break the band open as well.
Okay.
Album went gold. It's probably platinum now. Who knows? We change labels so often, we don't know who sells what anymore. But I think the issue became there because we became a darling of album radio that year. Album radio, rock radio. So it was a dream because they were playing the shit out of our records, or that record in particular. But also they go deeper. They went back to Rock and Roll Machine and played a little of that. Mm-hmm. Then what happened? Yes, as what happens, as executives change, some payola stop being important, which right in the middle of a single is the bad time for that to happen. Because Right on the Line was just starting to break, and then the record companies stopped paying what they should have paid, and records were falling off the charts like birds from the sky that's hit by shotguns.
Was Progressions of Power a bit of a backstep in terms of the momentum?
Well, yeah, based on the success of that record, which it didn't do that great. Mm. So yeah, you could say it was a backward step. I personally liked it. I liked the audio of that record. It was live and had energy. Maybe it didn't have that hit song on it, but not all albums have hit songs. But yeah, and we had record company issues. Well, every act has record company issues, so you can't really blame anything on that other than you can't.
Mm-hmm. But I guess that's probably, I'm assuming that's what led the band to think, all right, well, let's really take our time on the next one. And how do we take our time? Let's make our own studio and remove that pressure that we've had in the past.
Yeah. And, there wasn't there's pressure to tour, pressure to deliver, lots of pressure to do a lot of things. But we've said, no, we got to make this record's the most important record of our career right now, as every record is. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take whatever time we need to make the right record.
Mm-hmm. Now, in developing this 40th anniversary box set, what did it mean to you to revisit that material? Was there anything you forgot about that you rediscovered through this process?
Not really, because we had done a 30th anniversary as well.
Okay.
Not a box set, but a colored vinyl, mm-hmm. a limited edition. So I had already gone through wow, that was great. I can't believe I forgot about this song. Oh, listen to that lick. I've gone through all my ups and downs at that point with it. This time, it's, the coolest thing for me about this box set is because of COVID, I was hardly involved in any of it, which for me, it's like I'm usually, I'm horrible at hands-on. I want to see every T crossed properly and every I dotted. The music has to be perfect. And let's remaster it again because it doesn't sound quite right. Couldn't do any of that because we were shut down here in the province of Ontario where we lived. And then when we'd open up for 2 weeks, you get something done. But we hired a gentleman, Andy Curran was his name. And Andy became the project coordinator.
Okay.
And he was able to run around because where he lived, just outside Toronto, they were not enforcing any of the regulations. All the records were made here in Canada. All the artwork was done in Canada, and all around where Andy lived. So he could just trot around and get everything done. And the studio was out there, so he'd go hunt for stuff in the studio. He'd go to the attic. We have an archive at the University of Toronto, which was closed, but he got them to, send boxes and boxes of memorabilia over so he could look through it and see what he could find to put in the box. So he did an incredible job. He's still working because I don't have the box. I don't have it because the picture just came off the press yesterday. There's still some components that are still under manufacture.
Well, look, Mike, you're going to have to wait in line like the rest of us on Record Store Day for it, I think.
I guess so. Hopefully the record stores are open up there.
So did Triumph typically have a lot of outtakes, or was pretty much what was recorded made the record?
What we did was we take a song and record it, or do bass drums or guitar, put a scratch vocal, what we call a scratch vocal on it, just a rough vocal, sit down and listen to it and go, that sucks, erase it.
And you literally erase it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Because, for two reasons. One is it was embarrassingly bad. You never wanted to hear it again. And two is technically a record company, because they're writing the check to us to make the record, could possibly end up owning that.
Got it. Okay.
So the only thing we delivered the record company was the master tape, the actual finished goods, so to speak. And here's what we're going to make. Here's what we're going to master at the mastering lab, and that's what you're going to make platters from, and stampers, and that's what you're going to make that disc from.
Right. Okay. So now when you go through this process, 30th anniversary or 40th anniversary, there's not a lot of other forgotten songs that you can.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. There is a couple of reels of 2-inch tape with my name on them that are very personal to me, which probably contain some of those. It's just people are having trouble finding it.
Now, with all the Triumph tapes, is pretty much everything accounted for, or what's missing?
That reel for sure.
Do you know what? That was just your ideas, your scratch tracks, or that?
Those were outtakes that maybe could have got finished at some point because they were on the edge of being. They were half rejected and half approved.
And when's the last time you saw this tape?
Oh God, 20 years ago.
Okay.
But everything got, when we did our archive for U of T, we sent like a semi full of stuff over there, including all the 2-inch tape. And it didn't turn up in that round of donations. So I'm hoping it's still up in the attic somewhere, but we'll see.
Got it. Okay. So that tape's missing. Any other master tapes or 2-inch tapes from any of the other albums that are unaccounted for?
No, we had everything else was there. Most of it was backed up with safety masters. We realized, like tape does rot. Mm-hmm. And every 10, 12 years, we'd do 2-inch masters, hook up the machines and run them again, just because you never know. Mm. And the same thing with the 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch.
Now, in the business of Triumph, obviously you've got the 30th and the 40th anniversary box sets. Sounds like you weren't as involved in 40th as you were 30th. When it comes to these sort of box sets or any kind of business around Triumph, is it a cooperative task? Is it pretty much you and Gil managing it, or how much is Rick involved in that?
Rick gets involved when he has to. Mm-hmm. He prefers to stay away from it until he's needed, so to speak.
Right.
Because don't need Rick until, okay, let's talk about the artwork, right? Then Rick will get involved in the art and go, I love that, or I hate that, or I have an idea for it, or that kind of thing. And he'll have ideas about what else can go in the box, So, for example, he used to do a column for Hit Parader magazine, called Rock Tunes, and there were cartoons. So he drew some cartoons for the box set.
That's right. I remember that from back in the day. Okay, far out.
Yeah. So they're in the box. There's I think 3 cartoons that he either drew them or he just had them already. But I think he just had them.
Okay. But
they're in the box set. So it's cool that he came up with that idea. It wasn't our idea to do it. He goes, hey, wow, I do some cartoons. And there's handwritten lyrics in there. It's again, that was his idea. For doing that.
Now, is there anything in the story of Triumph that you feel is incomplete at this point?
All the stuff I can't remember, which is a lot. It's like some stuff that we did was so off the wall that it was crazy. But honestly, I'd like a lot of it. I have no idea. Someone will say, "Hey, do you remember when you guys did this?" And I go, "Holy, I forgot all about that." You're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And whether it was something simple or something crazy or some dumb business thing we did, or some show we played and somebody got sick and we had to cancel in the middle of the show. Mm-hmm. Stuff that's never top of mind until somebody reminds you of it. Because it's like there's a million stories of the naked city, so to speak, and there's a million Triumph stories to go around too.
Mm-hmm. So I think myself and most Triumph fans are resigned to the fact that there probably won't be a final tour or a victory lap of that sort. I mean, I'm assuming.
There may be some incarnation of that, but not necessarily what I would call a tour, but there could be some touring type thing, which I can't divulge because we're not 100% sure that it really will happen yet, but it will involve some incredibly groundbreaking technology.
Ooh.
I can say that. We did play, for the film that's coming out this fall, hopefully, but it'll be finished. So we played 3 songs for a crowd of 150 of our biggest fans that got to come to witness it. Mm-hmm. And that was okay. So we know we can still play, but it's the lack of the voice, the vocal part. It's rough for Rick to sing those parts. His voice was always high, and he can't do that. It's part of age. Yeah, get those notes. But we may do something around the film again. We may do something. Amazon is asking us to do something, so we'll see. Who knows? If we feel we can do it and pull it off, we'll do it. If we're going to embarrass ourselves, forget it.
All right, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about the history of Triumph and the early records, as well as this brand new Allied Forces 40th anniversary box set. Again, I want to remind folks on Record Store Day, I believe it's going to be June 12th, Triumph are the Record Store Day Canadian ambassadors of 2021, and they're celebrating that day by coming out with a box set for Allied Forces. It contains a picture disc of the original studio album. There's a Live in Cleveland 2 LP set from 1981 that's available. There's also a 7-inch single. There's some songs that, or some versions of songs that were never before released, as well as posters and a retro tour book, a poster, a whole bunch of stuff in this Allied Forces box set. So make sure you grab one of those before they're gone on Record Store Day 2021. And again, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're welcome anytime. I'd love to talk to you more once once COVID lifts a bit and maybe there's something exciting to share with the rest of the fans.
Oh, God, we hope so, Nate. It's been fun. It's great to speak with you. Thank you.
There we go, Mr. Mike Levine of Triumph. 2021 Record Store Day Canada ambassadors. It was an honor to have you on the show, sir. Of course, everyone, check out the 40th anniversary of Triumph's Allied Forces, the box set available June 12th, Record Store Day. Go get it. And that's it for this week's episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you all so much for tuning in and enjoying this episode. If this is your first time around, please check out our back catalog. We've got literally hundreds of other interviews with great musicians and talking about vinyl records. It's all fun. Check out the Vinyl Guide podcast, subscribe, go through our back catalog, and enjoy. Of course, feel free to leave us a positive review on iTunes. That's always hugely appreciated. Share on social media, tell your friends, and that would be absolutely tremendous. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.